We're live, Michael. Stop looking at your phone.
Somebody more important than you.
Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Good week.
Interesting, but a really fascinating client, Nick. You know, I told you to watch the show. I hope you are. Really fascinating stuff that he was talking about, I think.
Right.
I read a book a while ago called The Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Right.
You read it?
No. Was it a revolution?
It's an amazing book, actually, I thought. And me and Nick were talking about that. I mean, I was with the guy for about an hour and 3/4.
Right.
Going through a brief. We spent about, a good amount of time talking about that. So it's been an interesting week, but good. And I'm going to play 9 holes of golf after this. The second 9 holes, in 2 years.
Your second 9 holes of golf in 2 years?
Yeah.
How very exciting.
Yes, good.
Right, okay. I'm going to see some relatives tomorrow.
Are you looking forward to it?
It's alright. Shall we talk about our book?
Yeah, let's do that.
Right, so we are on chapters 7, 8 and 9.
We are, yes.
Of Way of the Wolf. And the 3 chapters are chapter 7, which is about advanced tonality, and then there was chapter 8, which was, what have we got here on chapter 8, Mike?
I can't remember, I've read them all.
Yeah.
Body language.
Yeah.
And then canvassing.
Then 7, 8 and 9, chapter 9 is the art of prospecting.
Yeah, well, sorry, prospecting.
For which we had high hopes, wasn't it? And then chapter 8 was advanced body language. So I guess let's have a chat about it, really. So chapter 7, as we look at it right now, I'm just going to focus that in there. So chapter 7, he talks about advanced tonality, and I like this chapter, ish. And I'll tell you what he talks about, and what the premise of the chapter is he says, he starts talking about what he calls the 10 core tonalities that drive human influence. And what he means by that is, he's talking about these 10 core tonalities, and then he does this big caveat about remember your ethics and integrity. And I wrote here, he starts off with some great salesmanship, with this little part in the book. It says, please write down the following ethical statement. I will never use the strategy I'm about to learn to manipulate my prospects into acting against their...
Yeah, I mean, that was him selling the book brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to a conclusion that I'll probably go into a little bit more at the end, which is I feel like this is a very good piece of sales material for Jordan Belfort's courses, but I don't get a lot of content. But then he talks about these 10 tonalities, and I think, okay, and he's got a point.
Oh, he's right.
He's definitely got a point about tonalities. He's talking about this line here, I highlighted it this morning. It says, he talks about his mum and how she used to talk to him.
Yes.
And he'd say, in this instance, for example, if his mum says tone, then the additional words I heard were, over here right now, what the hell have you done? And conversely, if his mum went, Jordan, in a sing-song tone, then the additional words he heard were, where are you, my darling, come out, wherever you are.
Yes.
And I do agree, I've spent a lot of time trying to coach people on this, particularly when they're trying to get past gatekeepers.
I was talking to you about this 3 chapters ago. Can you actually truly change somebody's tone? You can change the modulation and speed in the voice, but you can't change the tone. You
can change their intonation, though.
Yes. I mean, the first thing I wrote down here, he said something like, you see, when you're a born salesperson, you don't have to consciously decide which of the 10, and so on and so forth. And something I've always said, and I think people think I'm a bit mad when I say it, is I think that by listening to the person on the other end of the phone correctly, you get a feeling of which tone you should apply in that situation.
Okay, that's not... Yeah, I get that, and that's more. He talks a lot more about. He talks a lot more about mirroring and matching, doesn't he? But I think what he's trying to say is, for example, and I wrote here. Do you remember a fella called Jeremy we dealt with many years ago, who used to finish every statement, and he at the end of every conversational statement he'd say, "Yeah, it was a really interesting comment." Yeah.
Jeremy Hooper.
Yeah, I wonder if he's watching. I hope he is. I actually saw him selling to somebody at the Belfort Hotel the other week when I was having a club sandwich before I went to play golf.
Lovely fellow, Jeremy.
Lovely fella. A very good track record, been with his current employers a long time. And he used to have this very persuasive way where he'd say, so I think we should organise that interview, yeah?
I'll tell you who does that, Neil Upton.
Right.
He says, right. And you just find yourself just agreeing to him and smiling,
it's
going...
It's an intonation and tonality thing. And he's caveating every question with a close. So every comment he makes to you, he
Well,
closes.
he's putting the tie down on the end of every.
Yes, he is. And what he's saying is that you can do that with tonality, can't you?
Well, you didn't do it with tonality, you did it with a question, didn't you?
Yeah. So So for example, one of the things I noticed, and we've recruited lots of millennials, is they're all imbued with the upward inflection.
Yeah, because they watch Aussie TV.
Where they've just got it off shit telly, shit artists, shit media that they consume.
Do you reckon?
Yes.
Too much Love Island.
Too much Love Island. Too much Love Island. And they have this upward inflection. So then what happens is we put them on the phones or in front of customers, and before they know it, they're sat in front of the customers going, working with inward revenue is a really good idea. And actually they're asking the client a question and they're denoting uncertainty. And I think what your man Belfort's getting at is, for example, why would you use a statement with an upward inflection at the end? And he actually talks about using the upward inflection in the right context.
Yes, he does, yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. And a lot of what I've got out of this book is he's talking a lot about a lot of stuff that isn't talked about enough in the modern sales environment.
Well, I mean, principally, Jordan Belfort is a salesman.
Yes.
He's a salesman who's written a book for salespeople. And
Yes.
he's proud of being a salesman. And that's very evident in the book itself.
Yeah, I concur.
Whereas a lot of the other texts are quite dry.
Yeah, almost certainly. They're a little bit dry, a little bit quote-unquote strategic. This guy's down in the weeds about...
It's not necessarily that, he's saying I'm a salesman. Yes, I'm not a psychologist, I'm a salesman. Say something that he goes on to speak about, and this is chapter 100, still in the same chapter, page 111, 112.
Yeah.
He says, one of the tonalities is about I care or I really want to know tonality. And he says, when he's talking about scripts, he says that you should always ask, how are you? I've got to tell you.
I missed that.
Yeah, page 112, clearly.
Right, yeah. Yeah, here you go. In essence, this is about being fully engaged.
I just think that is the worst starting point to a sales pitch.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I just think that is full on. I don't give a shit how you are, but I think I ought to ask it. But actually, what's happening to you as a prospect is you're immediately putting your guard up.
Good morning, my name's Jonathan Graham. I'm calling from Inward Revenue Consulting. How are you today?
Oh, yeah, guards up, gone.
Yeah,
and I think to myself,
I really don't want to speak to you right now.
Yeah, and I think to myself, is that because this is an old book? Is that because it's old-fashioned? Because I tell you what, my mate had a car accident a couple of weeks ago. When I see him at some point this weekend, which I will do, I'll say, hey Tom, how are you? And I really mean, Tom, how are you? I really want to know how you are.
Yeah.
And when I ask people how are you, I mean how are you? But I think in this sales patter stuff that we're getting now, it's, here's your script, how are you? Brackets, I really care.
Well,
it's not that, it's how are you? Brackets, somebody told me to ask it.
Well, actually, I think when you ask how are you in a sales context, you're metaphorically inviting yourself for a punch in the mouth.
Yeah, and I want
How are you? I'll tell you how I am. I'm busy. How many times do you get that? How are you today? Busy.
Well, you just set yourself up wrongly.
Yeah.
But on the next page, though, what I really did like about what he was saying is, the line is, hi, my name's Bill Patterson, calling from Acme Travel Company in Beverly Hills, California. Now, what he has done there, if you can read the book, is he's broken it into 3 things, and he said, hi, my name is Bill Patterson.
Yeah.
2, calling from Acme Travel Company.
Yeah.
3, in Beverly Hills. And actually, what he's alluding to in those 3 sentences is, hi, my name is Bill Patterson, little gap. Oh, you want to interject, but I'm not quite going to let you. But I thought you might have a go. Calling from Acme Travel Company. Oh, you want to interject, but I'm not going to let you. In Beverly Hills, California. Now, I think that kind of scripting is very smart. That's not about tonality, though. That's about the timing of the sentence. And that, I think he's got that right. Because I think whilst you can't change your tone, you can change the speed with which you speak.
Your timing and your cadence.
Correct. And I think that's about timing. And on one page, 112, I thought, Jordan, you are talking out of your arse. That's absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
And on chapter 113, I thought, right, now
we're
we're
back
into
a bit.
it. And then another thing on page 113, that again I thought was brilliant, is he goes, by phrasing each of these statements as questions, back to back, you infer what's called a micro-agreement. Now, I don't know whether it was you, Dave Shields, Steve Griffith, or somebody at Howard Jackson, one of you, on about day 3 referred to that as an agreement staircase. And what you were talking about
agreement ladder, I used to call
agreement ladder, maybe that was it. And you would just ask tie down after tie down after tie down after tie down, and before you knew it, you were tied into it.
So he sounds good, this candidate, doesn't he? Yes.
And I tell you, he was brilliant.
And he's got an excellent track record, hasn't he? Yes.
The master, and it was his only skill. If you're watching Steve Griffith, he just used to literally, I bet he drove his wife and kids absolutely mad. Tied down every sentence, every time, all the time.
Yeah. So I like that. And he just say, there is a line here I think is really good. Remember, tonality is the secret weapon of influence because it's an unspoken language. Your prospect hears words without you having to say them and gets influence without even knowing. And he is right. And I made a note here to say to the viewers, really, if you get a chance, go to YouTube and YouTube Darren Brown buys jewellery. There's a great...
I've seen it where he pays with the fake money.
I've often shown it to new trainees where he pays with blank money. And 90% of that is... There's two things. One is embedded... what he's actually using in that is sleight of mouth language patterns and embedded commands. And what he's also using is a much more sophisticated version of this advanced tonality.
Yeah, right.
And if you've been trained in it, you'll realise you can deconstruct it a little bit. So, for example, he goes into the shop and he says to the guy, I'm very nervous about being in New York. I'm very nervous about being in New York. Anyway, how much is the ring? And my friend says I should be careful about being in New York. And I said, what should I do? And he said, you should take the subway. And I said, really, take the subway? It's a bad idea. And as he hands over the money, he says, take it, it's fine.
Yeah, I get it, I've seen it.
And he uses a very commanding, take it, it's fine. And then he gives it to the guy, and he's used this confusional language pattern, then this embedded command of take it, it's fine, and the tonality. So, fair play to you, man, Belfort. I like his concept. What I have to say is, as a book, the delivery around it, if I didn't know much about this,
if you didn't know much about selling,
I've learned,
just skip.
Frankly, pardon the language viewers, I've learned fuck all.
Yes, I agree with that. The next bit that I ticked that I did think was very good actually. He makes a point about when you call, and he goes, you didn't call yesterday, you didn't call tomorrow, you didn't call next week, you called right now, and there's a specific reason that I am calling you right now.
The reason I'm calling you today...
Now!
Yeah,
I thought, great.
Yeah, there's not enough of that.
And I also thought, I liked his thing about scarcity, and he uses the car salesman bit as an example, and I thought that was smart.
I also made a note here that he talks about... and my concern here was, I wrote in the sidebar of page 115, I put the challenge here is that not that many people can and will do it in our world, Mike. In as much as a lot of our candidates, and this is your point about tonality, are ex-technical or pre-sales and can be quite deadpan. You know, we deal with a lot of very, very senior level people who are actually a little bit deadpan and are not very tonal and are not very...
That's my point.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean they're any less top guys, does it?
There's a really top guy who I really rate. I hope you're watching it, Tim Hood. I think Tim Hood's absolutely mega, but his tone's very fun.
A bit deadpan.
Very.
Calm, deadpan.
But an absolute mega
But
sales
his customers trust off him and buy shitloads of stuff off it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and then he talks about sort of lowering your voice and hanging on to the...
That was alright.
Yeah.
I like that. I liked 121, page 121. I wrote down listen, pause, clarify.
Where's that?
So let's say he responds to asking for the order. Your prospect says, it sounds good, let me think about it. Your reply would be, I hear what you're saying, but let me ask you a question. What he's actually done there is listen, pause, clarify. And then what he's done a bit later on is he's made, he's called it implied obviousness. But he said, now John, you'll make a load of money with this. But more importantly, I just thought, very elegant actually.
Yeah.
For a very simple pitch thing, I thought it was very elegant beauty in that.
Yeah,
very
and
good.
I think that what I've got out of this so far is, if you're an experienced salesperson and you read this book, I think it would probably, hopefully, jog you into thinking more about those topics and going down a relearning rabbit hole or a new learning rabbit hole, out of which you'd find some pretty interesting other learning.
You're right.
Really?
As a novice, I wouldn't give that to somebody as the first sales book.
No, I'd be I think it would frighten the life out of a trainee.
Well, I don't think they'd be. I don't think they would understand it. It would be like me reading a book in French.
So then he goes on to advanced body language. Now, I'm going to caveat this chapter a little bit with if you're interested in body language, there is a book by a guy called Joe Navarro called What Everybody Is Saying. He is an ex-FBI agent who teaches body language and interrogation techniques at Quantico, or did do for years, and then retired and went into the private sector. His book is excellent, particularly if you're in the interviewing business. Frankly, Chapter 8, I don't think there's a lot for us to talk about here.
Yes and no, actually.
There's a couple of bits that were useful, weren't there?
I tell you what, he made some very valid points, I think actually particularly for ladies rather than men, in fairness, about what to wear. Because I think actually, well, let's cover a few points actually. So he talks about men and wearing suits. Now let's get it right. You wear less suits than me.
Yes, but if I interview a candidate or meet a client, they get the courtesy of a business suit.
So I agree with that. I think that's his point. I then also think it's much easier for a man to dress dead straight than a woman. Because he talks about the length of a woman's skirt, you know, you're borderline covering sort of taboo subject, really.
A bit sexist even thing talking about it, isn't it?
Yes and no, because I think there's a bit of taboo subject that we don't talk about.
It's an elephant in the room that possibly wants to
discuss. Well, nobody ever talks about it. But in fairness to Jordan Belfort, he does. Absolutely gets it right.
You're right.
I think he talks about beards. I've got to say, you know, the whole beard thing, it's not for me. I know it's for you, and I know I'm probably living in the olden times.
Pretty darn
but my point is, he says anything more than a closely cropped beard or moustache, you know, and you should shave it. I've got to say, this whole hipster beard thing.
Would you buy for Salesman with a hipster beard?
No,
I wouldn't.
But I know some really good ones. Dave Mackay, I always think your beard's a bit big, but whenever I meet you, I think, God, you're a good salesman.
I wouldn't buy for Salesman with a hipster beard and a hoop earring. Oh, Jonathan, you're so narrow-minded. Yeah, great. If I had to make an important key decision for my business, and there was one guy in a navy suit and a white shirt and a pair of shiny shoes, and some other guy in a brown suit with a big hipster beard, I reckon the guy in the navy suit would have a little bit more influence over me over a mission-critical decision for the business.
I agree. So, I mean, but actually, I just love this. He said, can you guess what's the worst thing a man can wear in terms of creating a perception of mistrust? A pinky ring. Especially if it has a big fat diamond on it.
His point is, he's saying don't look like a spiv and expect to win deals.
Well, Jonathan, have you seen the cover? He's wearing a shiny grey suit and a black tie.
And he looks like he's been smashing it in the gym, doesn't he?
Yeah. He looks like he's wearing a silk suit that cost about $5,000.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I get his point.
I do agree with him on that.
And what he's also saying, and fair play to him in the book, is about body language. And he's not really into body language. What he's really saying is, if you sell to the banking industry, dress like a guy that sells to banking.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're selling to creatives, dress like a guy who sells to creatives. And he's saying, get your horse right for your course, isn't he?
I'll tell you another one that's interesting. He talks about eye contact. Now, I've got a few candidates more recently who have stopped taking notes. And I find they look at me a lot more. And I have this point about taking notes, which is I like to take a lot of notes. We had the whole conversation about the iPad Apple Pencil thing that I tried to like. I think garbage, actually. Looking at your book, Belfort reckons you've got to make at least 72% eye contact. I think 72% eye contact is tough when you're taking notes.
Yes, it is. I mean, I know I personally find it quite easy because I'm looking for eye accessing cues. So I'm...
Yeah, but you still take a lot of notes, though. Whenever I see you take a lot of notes.
But when I look up, I'm clocking eye accessing cues, particularly if I'm interviewing, and particularly if I'm interviewing face-to-face. So I'm getting a lot of eye contact. Personally, I think eye contact as a form of rapport, as an NLP practitioner, is utter nonsense.
Yeah?
Yep. Utter nonsense.
Why?
I think the guy's just talking out of his arse.
He's an NLP practitioner, then?
Yeah, but he's not practicing, he's not walking his talk, as we say in NLP there. Eye contact. Well, what if you're dealing with somebody who's perhaps very, very auditory digital? They never make eye contact. The guy, I've interviewed a fellow this morning, really auditory digital, very technically minded. If you try to make eye contact with him, you break rapport. And there are lots of people with whom, if you try to make heavy eye contact, you'd just break rapport with them. Actually, rapport is about tonality, matching, mixing, pacing, language, tonality. That whole eye contact thing.
According to Jordan, on page 132, it's like nodding. You've got to nod your head. Now my dog nods his head, so I didn't really know what you meant.
And those little Elvis things in the back of cars.
Yes, so you got to nod your head.
Right.
But I'm a bit like you. I sort of skipped through this.
Yeah, I got into it, and I just thought, oh, come on, I'm uninspired now. Tell you what was very useful. He talks about cornering off.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a note about that because I don't really. The chap I met yesterday, actually, Nick. Just the way the room was set out, we ended up sitting opposite one another. Actually,
was there a table in between
you?
you? It's okay.
Is it okay? Because I felt very comfortable talking to him.
Yes.
And interestingly, I read the chapter before I met him, actually.
Yes, it's okay if there's a table in between you, but if there's not a table in between you and the two of you face head on, that's alpha male shit.
See, I don't like that. I don't like the alpha males, really.
That's a very alpha male thing to do, to sit in front of somebody absolutely head on. So if you went into any psychotherapist's office, the psychotherapist would have the chairs cornered off.
What, like this?
No, not as quite a sharp an angle, but they would definitely be at an angle. There's no way the therapist would sit directly in front of you. Because they want to give you time to think and space to think and process your thoughts a little bit. But I did like that, and I thought that was very sensible. And if you look, for example, in the Ops manual we were using several years ago, when we were training new recruitment consultants, actually there was a diagram of how to set up an interview room with the chairs cornered off.
None of them ever did it.
No.
And I tell you what, there was one chap in particular who used to have a table, and then they used to sit both on the same side of the table, facing each other. Now he's he's not an alpha male. He portrays to be an alpha male, but actually deep down he's not really.
Actually, he's a little puppy.
Yeah, you were going to swap a couple of the P's then, I think. And whenever I used to walk past him in the interview room, he always used to look awkward.
Yeah.
Like he got into that situation, they were comfortable with it, and he was thinking, "What have we done?" Yeah, underneath it.
Absolutely. I'll tell you the thing that was really interesting is he talks about handshaking here.
I know, yeah.
Now, something that I caught my...
No.
Oh, it was awesome. And this is what he's alluding to here about mirroring and matching a handshake in terms of building rapport. There was one point, him and Kim did his deal. I'm not going to get into the politics of what I think Donald Trump's like. I think, other than the fact that I think he's Neville Chamberlain in disguise. He holds Kim's hand, and then he holds the handshake. His hand is above Kim's hand.
Oh, so he gives it a bit of that as well.
He gives it a bit of the overpower thing. And then as they get towards the end of the handshake, and Kim's sort of nervously looking at the media, he pulls Kim's hand towards him.
Right.
In this very powerful, that's right. We've done a deal, but I'm in charge. And you can see Trump, if you watch Donald Trump shake hands with people, it is the most ever seen.
Because quite often you see, that happens to me, and people will shake my hand, and I can feel them turn my hand over, and I can feel them grip my hand more than I grip theirs, and I just think, whatever.
Yeah, you're an
unusually... don't care. I just think, whatever.
You're an unusually secure person, though.
I just think, whatever.
You don't care. You don't care what anybody thinks about you on any level.
No, not at all. And I do sort of occasionally meet candidates that are a bit like that, and I just think, whatever.
Yeah, I think personally, if you're playing games with a handshake,
what's that point?
And that you're
find something better to do.
Yeah, again, it comes back to listen to people's tone, match the speed at which they speak, match them and get into rapport with them at a deeper level. I think if you're worrying about your handshake, you're in the wrong room.
Absolutely. Now, the last one, I was looking forward to this, really.
You were so excited, weren't you?
Man, I was looking forward to it, because I love a bit of prospecting, actually. And I know people say that, but I actually really do. I thought it was okay. He said some good stuff, page 140. Firstly, it's crystal clear that you should be not, basically he says, trying to sell something to somebody who hasn't got a need is a fool's errand and a total waste of time.
Fair enough.
No pain. I mean, 100%.
Fair enough, but
100%.
A bit. I think the word I used in reference to somebody earlier on today was facile. I think that's a bit facile.
No, I think if you're a beginner in sales, that's something that need. Because see what happens a lot when you're prospecting is, it's a tough old game, and then the first person that shows you any warmth, you think, oh great, I mean.
Yeah. How often do we see that?
How often do we see it with people that have worked here, and I guess we're working in other.
People we've worked with in our careers.
They just work in other environments. I'm sure it's the same every environment over.
How's your meeting? Oh, he was lovely.
Yeah, of interview feedback.
Yeah. Oh, he was, or interview feedback even. Oh, he was lovely.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, brilliant. He was nice, was he?
Yeah,
So
right.
actually
How much money has he got?
Yeah, actually, it's the first potential quote-unquote sort of customer-style interaction you've had for a long time where someone's been pleasant with you.
And so I can see why Jordan put that in there. Then he talked about being an expert in your field and your bottled enthusiasm. And what I actually did like about page 141 is he started to link it back to other bits of the book. And I thought, up until this point, I thought, this is just a book where he's just said what's in his mind without thinking about how it's written. But then I thought to myself, all right, you're linking it back with other bits in the book. I thought it was like that. I thought, and then he goes on, page 143. The first archetype, so type of buyer, is a buyer in heat. I thought it was a crude thing to say.
I liked that though.
It was crude. It made me laugh.
But I did actually underline that. I did underline it because it made me chuckle. A buyer in heat.
Well, I got his point.
I get his point. It's what he's saying is
they're on. We're good to go.
This client is buying. He's in heat. He's got pain. He's having it. He's doing it.
What I dislike or whatever, and I thought to myself. He said the next buyer was the buyer in power, and basically that's the buyer that's about to come into heat, using his own crude analogy. And I thought to myself, I get his point, but if I canvass somebody, and the first thing they do is, yeah, I'm recruiting right now, I think, well, that's fortunate, but then I think, you're not recruiting right now, you've been recruiting, and I've called you right now. So actually, I have just walked into the middle of the park with loads of other recruiters.
Well, he's in heat, but he's already pardon me.
Yeah, well, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that, metaphor.
But you know, my point is the best buyer the one that's in heat now, or is the best buyer the one that you find out is going to be in heat in 2 weeks and you can influence?
For me, I think the best buyer is the one that's going to be in heat in 2 months.
Well, that's my point. But he reckons your best buyer is the one that's in heat. And I just thought, yeah, whatever, Jordan, you're selling the same stock as everybody else. What you're going to do, just hope that you can sell it better than anybody else. Actually, that's nonsense, really. So I didn't like that.
And then he talks about the dreaded lucky loos, the tyre kickers.
I like that.
Well, yeah, you know,
it's right.
In every industry, you get a lucky loo, don't you? We get them in recruitment. Yeah, I'm always interested in hearing what's out there in the market, and we're abundantly aware if you're not a good qualifier, you can very easily end up in a.
You get your offer turned down.
Correct.
Because they stay where they are.
Yeah, because people stay where they are. In any industry, there's always somebody who's always looking at the latest kit. Got a few hours on a Friday afternoon to have a demo, and before you know it, you've thrown several £1,000s worth of man hours at
yes.
something that was never happening really. So that's fair enough, and I made a bit of a note about that. The professional always looking, and then it really comes down to literally the last line of the chapter. He talks about, I've written here, overall, my concern with this was, he's given me some interesting stuff here. But I don't really feel any of this is stuff we're going to apply that well. He does caveat that with, in the next few chapters I'm going to give you the real nitty-gritty of actually how to do it. I hope so.
Yes, I agree. I mean, like I said all along, you can't knock the guy because, you know, he was a millionaire at selling stuff and getting other people to sell stuff for him.
Yeah.
So, you know, who are we to criticise, really?
Absolutely.
And if he came on the show and said, listen, who are you? I'd think, yeah, you've got a very fair point. But what I did think was, as a man who's read a lot of sales book, and I have spent my whole career selling and dealing with salespeople, I think that this book is starting to fall between two points. One of which is, if I'm a novice salesperson and I've never done it before, this is not a training manual. No. And if I've been a salesman for a long time...
It's not How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins.
Exactly. And if I've been a salesperson for a long time, it doesn't add any value to me.
Other than acting as a little primer to get you thinking about things you've probably not thought about for a while.
Yeah, it's a reminder, but that's about it.
Yes, there's not a lot of concrete stuff. For me, it just feels like a brochure vehicle for getting you to buy some Jordan Belfort training.
Do you know, I hadn't thought of that, but I think you're right.
Where I'm at chapter 10 is, I feel like actually what he's trying to sell me is some Jordan Belfort.
And would you buy it?
I'm a man that has hi-fi separates.
I'm a man that loves Big Mac.
So I like hi-fi separates, right? I would prefer to buy a separate turntable, a separate amplifier, a separate CD player. And so from a training perspective, I would prefer to go on NLP training and then go do language training and.
I get that.
But would I buy the integrated high fidelity training that is Jordan Belfort's turn up 4 days later, I'll have taught you a load of stuff about selling? I would buy it for a colleague or an employee, yes.
I'd buy something else before it, actually.
I'd give it a go. I'd be interested to give it a go.
My point about the Big Mac is, without wishing to sound facetious about the Big Mac is, you know what you get, you know what you're getting, and it's good value, and it's a meal for a £5. As a man
Where do you buy your Big Macs?
Not at the service stations. And actually, I think there's better meals for a £5 out there.
Yeah, okay.
From a training perspective.
I truly hope next week we're sat here going, wow, I really got a lot out of chapters 10, 11, 12. It's blown my mind.
Yes, but I've got to say, by the end of it, I'll be glad I've read it. Because I've not enjoyed reading it.
No, and
I've thought, fair enough.
I've enjoyed it more than Powerful by Patty McCord.
Oh, that was just garbage.
That was hard work, wasn't it?
That was absolutely just. But that wasn't a sales book then.
But do you know what? Funnily enough, just going back to Powerful by Patty McCord, I must have mentioned that book about 10 times in different meetings with different clients and different things I got out of it. So every book you read brings something to the party.
You can't read a bad one.
You can, but you can always get something out of one of them.
Yes, exactly.
Right, so next week we'll see if chapters 10, 11 and 12...
I've got to tell you, 10, 11 and 12, that's a lot of reading. They're big chapters, those.
Yeah, it's the final 3, isn't it? The final furlong, as they say.
This is like when I ran the Leeds Half Marathon, I only trained 7 miles. The last 2 miles was hard. This is going to be tough, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we need to choose another book so people can start getting their orders in. Any thoughts on one? I think maybe we need to go away.
Do you know, I was speaking to a guy, a chap called Patrick, about this on Thursday, I can't remember. And he was talking to me about the book club, which, by the way, loads of people talk about this. No one likes it on LinkedIn.
Like it and share it. I don't think
there's a link. If you like this video on LinkedIn, it doesn't mean you're looking for a job and you're going to get fired. It just means you've liked the video.
Yes.
That's literally all it means.
But
anyway, so I was talking to him about it. He's obviously watched it all the way through. And I was saying to him that maybe we should read something that everybody knows about already. The one for me that I think is absolutely like pulling teeth reading. Everybody says they know it. Nobody actually really knows it. It's Spin Selling by Neil Rackham.
Ooh.
How many candidates and clients say
I've actually done the spin training.
I've not done the spin training, but I've read the book. It's like wading through treacle.
I actually did the spin training. Now it was a while ago. I think you might find it was the mid-90s when I did it, but I have done it. And do you know what?
I didn't realise you were that old.
Every now and then I still go into a meeting and I write SPIN at the top of my notepad.
Yes. I mean, I was thinking maybe we should pick something very straight, or like Miller Hyman, or something that's widely recognised as a
mainstream.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe we'll look out for some suggestions.
Okay. Yeah. So how about this then? It's open to you, the viewers, until Wednesday evening of next week. And in the absence of a decent idea, Michael and I will choose Spin Selling by Neil Rackham.
Okay.
Agreed?
Yeah, fine, yeah.
Right, lovely to see you all this fine sunny afternoon.
I'm going to go and lose some golf balls. I reckon if I dropped 4, I'd be pretty happy.
Right,
overnight.
Fair play. I'm off to yoga.
How manly.
Hot yoga.
Oh, right, okay.
Does that make it any more manly?
No.
Okay.
I don't you sit there going, Namah Shivaya?
There's none of that.
Right, okay.
Oh, I don't do it. I'm not a man that says namaste to the teacher. I find that...
You're not walking... Because I'm not taking the mickey now. It is a place where you walk in and give a little...
There's a bit of that. At a certain point in the class, there's a bit of that going on. I don't do it.
What do you do?
I just stand there silently waiting. Right, see you all next week.
Bye.